Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Captioned Life. In today's episode, we are talking about Free Comic Book Day and all the ins and outs about it. We also talk about how it has its origins that's connected to ice cream and what opportunity Marvel actually missed out because of that. Hi, and welcome to the Captioned Life, a show for the most casual and dedicated fans of comics and a member of the Comic Watch family. I'm your host, Sean. Join me and discover what the world of comics and graphic novels have to offer. From one-on-one interviews with industry professionals, roundtable discussions with passionate fans, and reviews on the latest comics, TV shows, and movies. Now let's dive right on in. Today, we're going to talk about one of the biggest days of the year for comic book fans and shop owners, and that is Free Comic Book Day. This event usually takes place on the first Saturday of May, so this year it'll take place this Saturday, May 6th. And if you haven't heard about this event before and want to know more about it, or if you've been participating in it for years and want to hear from people who put it on every year, then you are in luck because we have a very special guest joining us to talk about this exciting day. So please welcome Ashton Greenwood to the show. Ashton is the Associate Marketing Manager for Diamond Comic Distributors, handling PR, advertising opportunities, social media, and of course, Free Comic Book Day and Halloween ComicFest. Also known as the Duchess of Free Comic Book Day, she can often be found hyping up those free comics on social media and probably obsessing over whatever title Archie is offering. Obnoxious Star Wars fan, self-proclaimed Jughead stan, and queen of hot takes, Duchess of Diamond Comic. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you, Sean?
Oh my God. I gotta say, I don't think I've ever had anyone that has that title before. I'm kind of curious, like how did that nickname come about? Like someone give you that nickname? Was there like a joke or something like that? Like, why do people call you a Duchess?
Yeah, so Free Comic Book Day is very near and dear to my heart. I get super excited about it. So when our show Previews World Weekly, my co-host Troy Jeffrey Allen named me the Duchess of Free Comic Book Day. He gave me the title because I get so excited about it. And it just stuck, awesome. And now it's a thing.
Yeah. Oh, that is awesome. I love hearing that. Well, good. Well, I'm kind of curious. So what you've been at Diamond Comic Distributors for a while, like what led you to Diamond Comic Distributors? Like, were you where were you before? Did you always want to get into the comic book industry, or tell us a little bit about your journey into where you're at now?
Yeah, so I've been like lifelong nerd, like you said in my bio, Star Wars is my thing, like Archie is my thing. Like I've loved that stuff forever, grew up on it. And so Diamond was actually my first job out of college. Mm-hmm. I stumbled upon the job listing on LinkedIn and just sort of was like, kind of applied to it, not on a lark, but like I don't think I'm going to get this, but I would love if I did. I just like threw my hat in the ring and crossed my fingers and it worked out. And here I am, been there for 5 years.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, good. Now, I know there's a lot of people who listen to the show that would love to get into the comic book industry in some shape or fashion. And it sounds like you were able to do that. So congratulations. That's awesome. You're living the dream, sounds like.
Oh, God, yes.
And, perfect timing because, as you said, you're a Star Wars fan. May the 4th is coming up this Thursday. Do you have any big plans to celebrate?
Oh, I don't know. I've been so focused on Free Comic Book Day, but one of my favorite shirts I own is like the Empire Strikes Back poster, the Return of the Jedi poster on like a t-shirt. So I feel like I have to wear that. But other than that, I don't know what else.
Gotcha. I'm in the same boat. I've been so busy with everything else as well too that I haven't even thought about like how I'm going to celebrate or anything. I'll probably same things. I'll probably put a Star Wars shirt on, and I know Star Wars Vision season 2 is coming out that day, so I'll probably watch that either the morning of or later in the evening. So that's probably the extent of how I'm going to celebrate Star Wars. So
that's pretty solid, though.
yeah. I mean, that's probably the most that I've been able to do for a while for sure. Favorite character from the Star Wars fandom?
R2-D2.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Why is that?
I love R2-D2 because he's there from the very beginning with like Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan while he's a Padawan all the way through to the very end. He never gets his memory erased after Revenge of the Sith. And he just is like, he's the plot point all the way through. He's like something of a silent narrator. And I think that's so cool. And also he keeps the secrets, which I think is incredible.
That is awesome. I love that. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone say R2D2 before, so that is definitely a first for me. But I love, like, the droids are really something different in Star Wars. So it doesn't surprise me that
Mhm.
that would be someone's, favorite. But yeah, I mean, the Star Wars fandom or the Star Wars universe, there's just so much to really like fall in love with. And especially
Yes.
video games right now with Jedi Survivor that just came out. I haven't had a chance to play it, but I've heard nothing but great things about it. And I played the Fallen
Mhm.
Order, and that one was a great video game as well too. But it just seems
Yeah.
like there's just so much that you can kind of dive into and really love with the universe. And so I just love that your favorite character is a droid. So that's awesome.
What about
um
you? I need to know yours. Hold on.
uh that is, oh my gosh, that's a great question. I can't really just limit it down to one.
Okay.
I
Top
I
three.
yeah, I gotta say, Din Djarin
Ooh,
has definitely been my
solid.
favorite. Just for a number of reasons. The Mandalorian was such a hit for me. I know it's a hit show, but it's
Mhm.
been a hit for me because it's just something very different than what we've had in the Star Wars lore.
Mhm.
That I just absolutely love that. Even though Star Wars has always been kind of synonymous with Jedi and Skywalker, and you
Mhm.
can't really have Star Wars without them. I was happy to see a Star Wars show that didn't have to like centered or be anchored to that necessarily. And I thought that was
Yes.
really great. Um, Ahsoka, and I'll say
Mhm.
this, I never watched Clone Wars or Rebels. But seeing her in season 2 of The Mandalorian, I was just floored with the character and just absolutely loved the character. And I thought Rosario Dawson
Mhm.
did a great job of being her as well too. So those two are definitely my top two. And then you got to
Yeah.
kind of go with the classic like Luke Skywalker. I've always
Yes.
enjoyed him as well too.
Of
So, but
course.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, so I think if I had to pick one though, I would say it's Din Djarin, just because
Mhm.
I find his story very fascinating, and the Mandalorian show very fascinating. And
Mhm.
especially, I come from I'm not a religious person now, but I come from a very like religious background. I have a
Okay.
degree in theology, so watching that show has a lot of religious overtures, especially
Yeah.
with Judaism and Catholicism. That it was just really fascinating just to kind of watch that aspect of the Mandalorian way of life and everything. And so it's just been a fantastic show just from multiple aspects, but the character I absolutely love as well too. So I think if I had to pick one, it would actually be him. Now that I think about it, so
I mean, that's a pretty solid pick. Can't go wrong
yeah,
with that.
yeah, and I think he's a very popular person. I don't think I've heard a lot of people not happy with that character. So yeah. Before we dive into talking about Free Comic Book Day, I wanted to ask you, what got you into comic books? Was it, someone introduced it to you? Did you just happen to pick one up one day? You had mentioned that you are a huge fan of Archie, so I'm assuming that Archie may have been what got you into comics, maybe?
So actually not. I'm kind of a prime example of what we hope adaptations of comic books would accomplish.
Yeah.
So I got into comics because I started watching The Walking Dead.
Mm.
And, I loved it. I didn't realize it was based on a comic. And my brother had read them and was familiar with them and told me that they were based on comics and gave me his copies to start reading. And from there, it just was like I hit the ground running. I got into Archie comics from Riverdale, which is now something of a hot mess, but the comics are great.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and Riverdale's just I only watched, I think, the first couple of seasons, but I really thought the adaptation just really interesting because it's not what you picture from the Archie comics at all whatsoever. So I love it
No.
when they try to do like a retelling of something that you're familiar with. And so yeah, I haven't seen this past the second season, but I was really fascinated with what they were trying to do with the show, and using, Archie as kind of like a springboard into this sort of this teenage drama show that it seems like every network has like at least 3 of those, right?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. um oh shoot, you said something and then it completely slipped my mind what I was going to say. I might have to come back to that. I don't know. Oh, now I remember what I was going to say. It's funny that you mentioned that The Walking Dead is what got you into comics. Because just like you said, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of popular shows and movies are actually based on comics. So just
Right.
recently, I created a TikTok video talking about how the really popular movie Road to Perdition was based on a comic book, on a graphic novel as well too. And so it's really fascinating to see how many movies, how many shows out there people don't realize what actually either were based on or inspired by a comic book series originally. So you're right. I think we're going to see a lot more of that, kind of crossing over between the media and the media and comic books. And so I think we're just going to see more and more of those, because those comic book stories, whether it's the traditional superhero or some of the unique stories that we don't see from, Marvel or DC, those are the kinds of stories that are really good, that can really translate on screen as well too. So I think we're just going to see more and more of those, because comic books are much more than just superheroes. There's a lot of great stories out there that has nothing to do with superheroes, or maybe they are superheroes, but they're different than, the ones that we grew up with. So
like The Boys.
Yes, The Boys is a prime example one. Invincible, that was one that I just recently watched and never read the comics, but after watching it, I want to read the comics because it sounds like a really interesting story. And again, it's all superheroes. It's kind of like The Boys on some level, in terms of the kind of story that they're telling, with a little bit more mature themes and a little bit of a darker reality about, heroism and things like that. But again, it's definitely a different take and different kind of hero story than what we're usually used to when we think about the traditional superhero stories from the comics. So good. Well, let's go ahead and dive right into Free Comic Book Day. So for those who don't know, let's start off with talking about what Diamond Comic Distributors is, because you all run Free Comic Book Day, and talk about what they do.
Yeah, so Diamond Comic Distributors, we like to call ourselves the nexus of comic books and pop culture, right? Because we function as something of a middleman between the publishers, comic book publishers, and comic book shops. So what we do is basically comic book shops place their orders for these new books coming out from publishers. We aggregate all of those orders and send them to the publishers. So they print the print run, they send their books to us. We then break the books up and send them out to the comic book shops. So in terms of what a distributor is, that's what we do. But something that I think is really, really cool about Diamond is we also offer a ton of marketing to publishers, to our retailers, and we take their books, and on Previews World, which is our consumer facing site, we do all kinds of really cool stuff. And that's kind of, I mentioned earlier, Troy, that's his jam. So that's stuff like creator interviews, preview pages. So you can kind of get a first look at the books, get informed decisions. We do all kinds of lists, new number ones, like best fight scenes, best female heroes, whatever, all of the super engaging, think BuzzFeed, but for comic books. It's awesome. And then on the flip side, we also do marketing to retailers and for retailers to help them make informed ordering decisions and get the books that are best for their customer base. Awesome. And then to flip back to the consumer side, I wanted to mention one other thing, which is the reason I'm here, and that's Free Comic Book Day. That's our main flagship, if you will. And, we really do that as a way to expand comic book readership, and bring new people in, but also cater to the tried and trues, the Wednesday Warriors, all those guys.
Awesome. Thank you. And that kind of dives into our next question, which is, what is Free Comic Book Day? Which kind of, is pretty apparent by the title, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about the history of the event, like when it got started, how it got started, and, kind of where it's at today since then.
Yeah. So Free Comic Book Day was founded in 2002 by a comic shop owner named Joe Field. He owns Flying Colors Comics and other cool stuff in Concord, California. And he basically came up with the same structure we use now. And his idea was, what if we gave out comic books for free as a way to drive people into the comic book shops, as a way to bring new customers to these comic book shops? And so he called up Diamond and pitched his idea, and Diamond was like, we love that. Let's make it happen. So 2002 was the inaugural Free Comic Book Day. There were only 4 free comics available that year. So you can kind of see how far we've come. This year, there's 43 books available for free. And so the whole goal really is, like Joe said, to bring new people into the shop, but also, we took that a step farther because we want to, cater to the people that love comics, and that's their bread and butter. So publishers take the opportunity to launch new stories. Marvel, traditionally uses Free Comic Book Day as a springboard for their big summer events. And, that's the case again this year. So the idea is that there's something for everybody. If you've never read comics, or if you love comics and you're in your shop every Wednesday, you will find something on May 6th that will fit you perfectly.
Yes, I agree. And I was looking at the titles, and first of all, there's a couple things I didn't realize until I saw, I think, an Instagram post from Free Comic Book Day is on each of the covers, it will say Free Comic Book Day, but it has a color-coded system, which I didn't realize the colors meant something. So as a parent, I really enjoy that because then I can take a quick glance at a book that if I'm not familiar with, I can see, is that appropriate for my kid or not, just from looking at the color. But just like you said, there is definitely something for everyone. So definitely when people think of comic books, there's definitely the traditional ones that we get from, DC and Marvel, like the Spider-Man and Batman and Superman and things like that. And there's also, some of the kid oriented comics like Spidey and His Amazing Friends. But then there's other ones that I did not realize that were going to be on Free Comic Book Day, like Dogman was going to have an issue that's out there. There's also ones that are different stories that's escaping my mind right now, but I know there's different stories that's not some of the ones that we used to think about, but people are familiar with the idea or at least the story of that. So I agree that I think there's a lot that are out there that even if you're remotely interested, I would encourage you to go because there's definitely a book that might be of interest to you, and it's definitely free. And then the only thing I would add in there is the comic book shops do have to pay to get these free comics. And so as you're there, don't just take the free comics and leave. If you can, try to support the shop by buying something, it's like their Black Friday of, for comic shops and stuff like that. So if you could at least, get something for them to support them, that'd be great. A lot of them don't really expect that, or at least don't make an requirement on all that, but it's definitely a great way to, support them and give back and everything. But yeah, and one of the other things I really love about the history of Free Comic Book Day is that it got inspired by Baskin Robbins as well, too. Is that right?
Yeah, free scoop night.
Yeah. Yeah. So he got the idea from that because Baskin Robbins was doing that. Right. And I gotta say this, Ashton, I was thinking about this, I think earlier in the week when I was thinking about having on the show and the whole history about Baskin Robbins inspiring Free Comic Book Day. I feel like Marvel had a missed opportunity to have a Free Comic Book Day cover where Scott Lang is like holding a Baskin Robbins ice cream or something like that. Wouldn't that have been cool?
That would have been awesome.
Yeah.
I would have loved that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, especially like like how they made it a joke in the first one, and then they brought it in with the latest movie as well too. Like I just thought that would have been just a funny way to do that and do like an Ant-Man comic for Free Comic Book Day. But oh well, maybe next time, right?
Man, you should call it Marvel with that one. That's good marketing.
I might have to. Okay, so we had talked about there's 43 titles that are being distributed. We don't have to go through each of the titles, but just kind of curious, like what are the big or interesting ones that we might want to highlight? And then I also want to ask, do you know like how these are usually decided, like what titles there are? I don't know if Diamond Comic Distributors is ever like privy or involved in those decisions or anything like that, but just kind of curious if what titles that the publishers usually decide to use for Free Comic Book Day.
Yeah. So to answer the first part of the question, first of all, I have to point out I'm most excited for the Cursed Library from Archie Comics.
Yes.
Which I'm very excited about because so Riverdale's always like wacky and weird things happen. So allegedly, like the Cursed Library is going to try and figure out like what is it about Riverdale that always makes things go haywire. So I'm excited for that one. You mentioned Dogman and the League of Misfits. This is probably the all ages title that has the most excitement around it. Like it's the one I hear the most about. It's the one that gets the most responses whenever, it gets promoted on the Free Comic Day pages. So that's a good one, especially if you have kids. The Marvel titles are always very popular. They have 4 this year. So I feel like, whichever one you pick, you're going to be happy with. Power Rangers, Umbrella Academy, and The Witcher. So if you're, a Netflix, coming from Netflix, those are a good fit. Animal Crossing. I'm really excited for this one from Viz. I do love Animal Crossing.
That was the one that I remember surprised me the most because I only know it as a game. I had no idea. First of all, I don't know if it's a comic series already, but I remember that capturing my attention. I was just like, Animal Crossing. All right, this is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's an ongoing one either, but I'm dying to see. I hope, I really want there to be a plot point about Tom Nook always owning your house, no matter what.
Oh man, that'll be fun.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's also Ruinscape, which I know is a popular one. And one of those books that, like you had mentioned earlier, maybe there's a license you're familiar with, and then you can grab it as a comic book, right? Like Ruinscape is stupid popular.
Right.
So if you're familiar with that, maybe you can pick up that book.
Yeah.
So in terms of how the book, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, if people are listening to this episode, if they're interested in knowing what those titles are, I'm going to have a link in the show notes that goes directly to the Free Comic Book Day website, as well as I'll have a link to League of Comic Geeks that has the whole list of titles as well too. So I'll provide both of those in the show notes.
Yay.
Yeah.
So the other question about how the books get picked, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Diamond is only minimally involved in the process insofar as they shepherd it along.
Right.
We put together the application and send it to the publishers. And basically the application is asking them to throw their hat in the ring, tell us what book they want to have, what title they want to have to be their Free Comic Book Day book, and a little bit about it. And then any marketability they can associate with it. Why would a retailer want to pick this book as their backlist, upcoming front list? Will the vendor help promote it, et cetera, et cetera. So they basically fill out an application packet. They send it to Diamond, and Diamond puts all of them in a zip file virtual folder. And we send it to Joe Field, founder, we mentioned earlier. And so he chairs up a committee of comic book retailers. He selects them every year. So it's kind of like a rotating group of retailers, and they go through all of the applications from the vendors and they pick the books, and they get to pick how many, they get to pick which ones. And they'll send along feedback for why certain books didn't get picked. So it's a pretty comprehensive process. They generally do keep it in that 40 to 50 range. And I think I really like this approach. And I think it's really the best approach we could take for Free Comic Book Day, because the retailers are the ones on the front lines here. So it makes sense that they would be the ones making these selections. They have the best pulse on what would be popular in their shops.
Right. Awesome. That is really interesting. I didn't realize there was a whole application process that they have to fill out and submit and everything ahead of time. I mean, it makes sense, but I guess I just never really thought about that whole process behind the scenes, prior to Free Comic Book Day, that gets involved with from beginning to end in that conjunction. So that sounds really interesting.
It's a whole process. We start in September, and then Free Comic Book Day is not until May.
Yeah. 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 And then I know there's a little bit of history of, I think if I remember correctly. So as we mentioned, Free Comic Book Day is typically the first Saturday in May. The only exception I think was 2020 when the pandemic happened. Right. And I think 2021 got pushed back to August because of all the restrictions that were still in place around May. But it's usually the first Saturday in May. And if I remember correctly, I think the first Free Comic Book Day was selected that Saturday, May, because I think it coincided with the release of the Spider-Man movie that came out. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a really great, really smart marketing on Joe Field's part to kind of partner it with where you already have that excitement and enthusiasm around pop culture, and you can just push people, shepherd people along. That was really smart. And Marvel's kind of kept a similar production schedule, movie release schedule. And it just happens that every year there's usually a Marvel movie that comes out right before Free Comic Book Day. It's perfect.
Like this year's Guardians of the Galaxy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very smart. And I don't know if it's, if it is strategic with this or not, but you're right. It's I remember Endgame came out. It was supposed to come out the first Saturday, May, but I think they pushed it. I think they made it come out a little bit earlier, or maybe it was vice versa. But yeah, you're right. It seems like the first weekend of May, they usually have a huge movie coming out. So if people are interested in Free Comic Book Day and they're like, how can I find out, more information about what's going on for that day? If there's a comic shop near me that is participating, or not just comic book shop, but we know that libraries can participate and other bookstores will participate. And I think there's a couple other venues or shops, sometimes hobby or collectible shops will also have free comics going on as well too. But if they're interested in learning more about what might be going on in their area, where can they find information at?
So if you go on the Free Comic Book Day website, which we've named freecomicbookday.com because we want to keep it simple, at the very top of the website, there's a button that says store locator. And if you click on that, you can, if you're using your phone, you can just like use your location, or you can put in your zip code and it'll populate a list of all of the shops near you that are participating. And if they're having any sort of like special event for Free Comic Book Day, it'll also tell you that there. So if they're having special sales, if they're going to have creators come out and do signings and sketches, if they're going to have cosplay contests or any sort of like the Stormtrooper Legions come out, all of that stuff is listed there too. So you can kind of put together a whole itinerary for yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what I love about Free Comic Book Day is that they're not just handing out free comics, but a lot of shops will do a lot of fun things with that day as well too. Yeah. So for example, my local comic shop, one of them, Circle City Comics, they usually have somebody dressed as Darth Vader out of their shop.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And my son loves that because Darth Vader is one of his favorite villains and characters. And so I remember the first time he went, he thought it was so cool. We had him dress up as Darth Vader and they all loved it. And so that was a lot of fun. Yeah. So it's always a fun one when they do that. And then the other comic shop that I usually go to, Comic Book University, they do this every year, but this year they always have different kinds of comic book artists or writers that will come and have like a little space. They also have artists that will do sketches and stuff like that. And this year they have Gavin Smith, who's going to be the artist for the next issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So, and he's from the Indianapolis area, or lives in Indianapolis. And so, yeah, so it'll be really worth your while to reach out to your local comic shop and see what they're doing for that day to celebrate. And the other thing I would also mention as well too is to make sure that they're celebrating, because not every shop will have that. Yeah. Yeah. And not that it's a very common thing for someone to not do it, but I have heard from some people that they went to a shop on Free Comic Book Day thinking they were celebrating, but for whatever reason, they couldn't for that year or for whatever reason. So it's a good idea to at least call ahead of time or go to the website or their Facebook page and just see what they're doing and make sure they're doing it to begin with. So, but yeah, we'll put a link to the website as well in the show notes. So if you're interested, you can just scroll down and click on it and it'll take you straight there. What's something about Free Comic Book Day that most people may not know about? Maybe it's like a little tip about the day or something else that about the history of it that came up, or just something that you think is really interesting that not a lot of people know about Free Comic Book Day.
So I have two for this. First one, you already said it, but I just want to reiterate it. The shops do pay for the books they give away for free. So if you have the money available, you should definitely purchase something while you're there. A lot of the shops have like insane sales anyway. So chances of you paying full price for something's not high. So if you have the availability, please support your local comic shop. I know that they would love it. I would love it. Do it for me. And then the second thing is, every year we commission a comic book creator to design for us a custom one-of-a-kind design that we use to make that year's what we call commemorative t-shirt. So, we've had Eric Powell in the past. We've had Derek Charm. We've had, all kinds of people get involved with this. This year, Laura Braga did it, which I was incredibly excited about because she does a lot of the art in the Archie horror series. So she did the art for us, made us a really cool t-shirt. She was fantastic to work with. And I just think it's really neat because it kind of adds another level of like collectability to this event, right? Like you can make it a point to get these shirts every year because we only print them for that event. And then after that, like, that's it. We don't print them again. So it's kind of another layer to it that I think is neat.
Do shops usually give out these shirts or sell them, or this is the first time I hear about shirts? Yeah, that's
a great point. You do have to buy them. They're not free.
Okay.
But they're reasonably priced. They're like $16 or $17. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's the price. It's in that ballpark.
Right.
But that could be, maybe that's the way you support the shop. You get your free comics and then you buy the shirt to go with it.
Yeah. No, that's a great idea. I love that. So yeah, maybe I've seen the shirt, just never realized it. But like when I hear of Free Comic Book Day, I never really think about the shirt aspect. So that's something I've learned. So I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't think about, Free Comic Book Day be an opportunity where there can be like collectible items and things like that as well too.
Right.
And I love there's a lot of things that can go with this. And it sounds like since it started in 2002, it's definitely evolved to a much bigger event and went from, I think it was just in a state in 2002 to like becoming national, even international. There's countries outside of the
Yeah.
US that celebrate this, and went from a few titles to, as how you said, this year's 43 titles. There's t-shirts. With all that being said, what do you think we can expect for the future Free Comic Book Day in terms of anything like new collectible commemorative that we can anticipate for, or something that Diamond Comic Distributors might be thinking about in years to come to do something a little bit different from Free Comic Book Day that has been done before? Anything along those lines?
Yeah. So every year we try to, I don't want to say every year, we try to get our friends at Funko involved as much as we can. They do have a Free Comic Book Day exclusive pop this year of Entering the Demon. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, they do like a limited run. So, we've been doing a lot of work with them. We're going to try and keep, Funko involved. Maybe there'll be more cool, like exclusive pops in the future.
Mm-hmm.
We've also talked about the idea of starting some sort of like Free Comic Book Day live stream and partnering with different retailers from around the country so that you can get a look at the different events. Because some of these stores like really, really blow it out, like crazy, like Double Midnight Comics. I see them on, tweeting a lot about their event. They're having food trucks. They're having like a bounce castle. They're like, it's a whole thing.
Wow.
So it would be awesome to kind of sync up with some of these retailers and get them just to like give us a tour of their event just for like 10 minutes if they can spare it. So that's something we're hoping to do next year and for future years. We're going to do like a smaller version of that this year, like a much more pared down version, but I'll be out at Cards, Comics, and Collectibles in Reisterstown, Maryland, and then at Collectors Corner in Parkville, Maryland with our production manager to live stream some of their events as like a test run of this idea.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that idea, because I think I'll be honest in that I have thought about doing something similar to that with my local comic shop. I think I had the idea last year and I was hoping to do it this year, but unfortunately Free Comic Book Day also falls on Indiana Comic Convention that I'm going to. So I'm only going to be there. And I also have, like, believe it or not, we were talking about this, off the recording about how everything hits at once. That day on Free Comic Book Day, I have two other things going on,
of course,
in addition to Comic Con. So it's like, I told him, probably not this year. I'll be there, for a couple of hours actually to kind of just be present and talk to people about the show and talk to them about Free Comic Book Day. But I'm planning on doing, some recording of the shop and the people that they're going to have there. But I had thought about, it'd be really cool to do some sort of live stream somehow during Free Comic Book Day and, like, have people come on the show, talk about, why they came to Free Comic Book Day, what got them into comics, why they're excited about. And again, like a lot of people, they just do a lot of fun things with Free Comic Book Day with, the cosplay and the people they have come in, and just like what you said, they make a huge event. And so I know that'd be a really cool idea to be able to have multiple live streams and just seeing how different comic shops are celebrating Free Comic Book Day. I love that idea. I think I'm all board for it. So if there's anything I can do to help, like, hit me up and I will do that.
Awesome. I love to hear that.
Yeah. One of the things that your bio mentioned is that you're also in charge of Halloween ComicFest, which I've heard of before. I don't think I've ever actually attended the event itself, but for those who don't know, what is Halloween ComicFest, and is it similar to, Free Comic Book Day, or what's the differences between the two?
Yeah, so Halloween ComicFest kind of spawned out of Free Comic Book Day. It is the spooky little sister. Same concept, except it's the last Saturday in October, so Saturday before Halloween. And all of the comics are spooky or horror or Halloween themed, in that vein, thrillers, those kinds of things. But it's the same concept. You go to your local comic shop, they're giving out free comics. Some of them have events. It is a much smaller event because it hasn't been around nearly as long. I believe the inaugural year of it was 2013.
Okay.
So we also, had a virtual version of it last year coming off of COVID, trying to get back on track. But it's just another chance to get out to your local comic shop and try a new book for free.
Yeah. So in terms of the horror genre and spooky and things like that, what are some of the titles that come from Halloween Comic Fest. And I know this is not Free Comic Book Day, but I think this would be something that'll be a lot of interest to people. But what are some maybe common titles that come from that day or shows up on that day that maybe people don't realize that, one, that it's a comic book, but two, that it's also, you know, a very popular one in comics as well too.
Yeah, the Archie horror books are always really popular for Halloween Comic Fest. Jughead the Hunger and Vampironica. A lot of Junji Ito books from Viz. Those are also really popular. Marvel Zombies,
right?
A Walk Through Hell. I don't feel like I answered the question, but those are books I've seen on Halloween Comic Fest.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious because I'll be honest, horror is not my kind of genre by any means whatsoever. That being said, there's a couple of comics that are horror that I've actually really been enjoying. You know, there's a book series called The Harrower that I would not have picked up, but Comic Watch asked me to review that series, and I've actually loved it because the story is really good. The art is really good. I feel like the art has a lot of layers to it in terms of why they use the colors. Like they use like, you know, very pastel kind of colors. And so anyways, I'm just not a horror kind of person, but if you are, or if you just want to maybe check out something different, like that might be something that you might want to check out, see if your comic shop might do that. And I know that's not until October, but if you're ever interested, or you're just like, you know, I wish they had another kind of Free Comic Book Day, you know, 6 months later, there will be one. Just Halloween focus. So cool. Well, I love the idea of, you know, in the future, you know, there's going to be hopefully live streaming for Free Comic Book Day. I know as, you know, as everything evolves, that the day will also evolve as well too, in a lot of different ways. And so I'm really excited about the future of Free Comic Book Day. I know Free Comic Book Day is something that is really special for me and my son because we go and participate in that every year. He's always excited about, you know, getting the comics and seeing what they have. And he's always looking out and like saying like, oh, that looks so cool, especially the Star Wars one. Like he always gravitates to that. He loves Dogman. So all the titles I was looking at, I just know that he's going to love them. He's going to be excited about it. So it's become kind of a tradition for us to do that. So if you have not been to Free Comic Book Day, I strongly encourage you to check it out. If you have any questions or anything, you know, hit us up on social media at Captioned Life, and we can tell you a lot more about it. We can give you resources, and this episode will have a lot of links for you to use as well too. So I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. We're going to dive into the next segment to talk about the comics we're reading. Before we get to that, I just want to remind people that Comic Watch, this show is a part of Comic Watch, and it's an organization and website that does reviews on comics, TV shows, media, films, you know, pretty much the gamut. And we're always looking for writers and reviewers. So if you're interested in maybe becoming a reviewer for comics or TVs or movies, there will be a link to apply in the show notes. So if you're interested in that, and then next week's episode, to give you a preview of what we're going to be doing, we're going to do a review of the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 movie. And our guest host is going to be Richard Nebbins of The Direct, who's been on the show before. And he is a writer and editor for The Direct and has some great insights to movies, especially with things that are from Marvel and DC. So I'm very excited to have him. So keep an eye out for that next week. So let's dive into the comics we're reading. Usually what we do is I share with everybody what people have shared, what they're going to be reading or what they are reading this week. And then Ashton, you and I will dive into what we're reading as well. So from Comic Watch, Tyler Davis said that they're catching up on a ton of recent books that they've fallen behind, either outright haven't had a chance to jump into, like Joe Fixit, All Against All, Fortress, War Across Time, Scarlet Witch. Chad Burdett said, recently finished Marvel Comics The Untold Story, and with my son getting into Star Wars, read Darth Plagueis, which is making rewatching Phantom Menace more enjoyable, if that's possible. Going through the old Dark Horse Star Wars comics, and I am now reading Star Wars A New Hope from a certain point of view. That's like the whole title. Apparently, Star Wars A New Hope from a certain point of view is the title of the book. It's short vignettes of minor characters around the main story. Lots of comic writers like Matt Fraction and Paul Dini involved. And then from our Discord server, Lumnicasters, ODPH Ken said, in honor of the new film, I'm diving back into the Abnett and Landing run on Guardians of the Galaxy. It gave Cosmic Marvel a great shot of creativity, and the influence on the latest film will reflect that. And then from Twitter, we had @Fit Bizarro said Detective Comics was fly as frick. He said a different word, but this is PG-13, so I had to adjust that a little bit. Getting ready to read World Tree 33 #1 right now. I've heard nothing but good things about it. Ashton, of all the comics that everybody shared here, was there one that you read or really struck your interest or anything like that?
World Tree is one Troy and I have talked about too, as just like something that's fascinating.
Yes, I've heard, I never heard of it until it came out this week, and I've heard a lot of people talking about it and really encouraged me to check it out. So at some point, I think I'm going to kind of dive into it, once I get caught up on everything else. But yeah, I always love hearing comic books that are not as well known and popular, in pop culture, but gives people really excited about the story. And just, I love it anytime that there is a non-traditional comic book that is getting traction and getting, getting more exposure, because I think a lot of times comic books kind of gets, trapped into this box, and I'm trying to push the box out for people to know that it's a lot more than what we traditionally think about, and that there's, comics for everybody of all ages, and there's a lot of opportunities. A lot of different cool stories are out there. And again, there's a lot of movies that you don't realize were based on comic books, because the stories are really good as well too. So World Tree 33 sounds like that's going to be one of those kinds of stories as well too. So Ashton, comics you're reading, and if you have a pull list, what's coming out on your pull list this week?
Okay. So I don't currently have a pull list, but I've been working through the Sandman. So, okay. I'm a bad comic book fan, because I had never read the Sandman. It feels like blasphemy to say that.
I just read that last year for the first time.
Okay, great.
So you're good. You're a good company.
Okay, perfect. I love that. Cause I tell that to like some people are like, oh, like it's like a sin to say you're a comic book fan and not have read Sandman. But okay, again, like I saw the Netflix show and loved it, and was like, I need all of this, put it in my eyeballs. So I got all 4 of the omnibuses, and I'm working my way through them. I love it. I'm obsessed. Also, Archie horror. I know I've mentioned them many times, but also obsessed. Pop's Chocolate Shop of Horrors and The Cult of That Wilkin Boy both came out. That Wilkin Boy came out last week, and then Pop's Chocolate Shop of Horror came out last month. But both are fantastic. I literally cannot say enough good things about the Archie horror concept. I think it is a brilliant use of those characters. Anything that is Archie horror, I'm immediately sold on it. And then finally, I need to get caught up on Undiscovered Country. I love that, but I fell way off. So I'm trying to get back on board with that.
Yeah. I have heard of Undiscovered Country. I've heard nothing but great things about it. I haven't had a chance to read it. The other 2 books you mentioned, I've actually never heard of before. But I gotta say, I don't think I realized that Archie Halloween was a thing. And to hear you talk about how much you love it and how good it is, I'm going to have to give it a shot and check it out around Halloween sometime and just kind of see. Yeah, it sounds really interesting. And I remember as a kid, I would read some of the Archie comics, and like I can't remember if it was one of those things where I don't know if I wasn't interested, or it was like I didn't know what was going on, because sometimes I didn't know, some of the things of like the relationships between Archie and everybody,
the love triangle and everything.
Yeah. Well, and then Jughead, like that was just kind of an interesting name of, why is somebody named Jughead, right? You got Archie, Veronica, Betty, and then Jughead. And I think for the longest time, I got confused because I thought Jughead was Archie, but like wearing a hat.
His secret identity.
Yeah, something like that. So I think part of it was I just got confused for the longest time, that I just never revisited it. And now, kind of, being older and everything, I think I'll probably understand it now. So, but hearing you talk about Archie Halloween comics, I'm going to have to give that a shot. So
I think you should. I love all of them, but I think Jughead the Hunger is probably the best starting place. It's just wild. It's like Jughead becomes a werewolf, like he turns into a werewolf at night, or like during a full moon, like a werewolf would, and just like wreaks havoc. And it's kind of crazy. It's kind of gory for an Archie comic. When I read it, I was a little shocked by it.
Wow. Has Riverdale does something like that where Jughead turns into a werewolf?
No, they've done a lot of other wild things. Jughead was the leader of he was the Serpent King for a while, but no
Yeah.
werewolf.
Well, and I know that Sabrina, the Teenage Witch, had crossed over, or like they live in the same universe. So it's not out of the realm of possibility for Jughead to turn into a werewolf in Riverdale
Not at
because
all.
of that. Yeah. So that's really interesting. Maybe they will in the final season. Who knows? So
Lord, they're in the final season right now and they need to wrap it up.
Oh, that's good to know. Well, for me, what's on my pull list? So this week I'm getting Batman 135, which has been a really interesting story that's been written by Chip Zdarsky, who seems to be, on a hot streak with a lot of stuff that he's writing right now. Immortal X-Men number 11 is coming out, and I just finished reading Sins of Sinister Dominion. And if anybody knows me, they know I love X-Men, but I'm also very open to saying that I don't know what's going on in X-Men half the time because
Perfect.
because they do that whole thing of I'm going to have like these 20 series that you have to read to know, all these little nuanced
Oh
storylines and
God.
everything. Yeah. So, but I enjoy it. Like
Mhm.
I find it really interesting. The story sounds really interesting, but it's just half the time I'm like, I don't know, like what did I miss here, So I'm sure I'm going to feel that way with Immortal X-Men number 11.
So do you find, can I jump in and ask a question really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you find that you're still able to kind of like keep up with what the plot line is, not having read the extracurricular reading?
Yeah, so Immortal X-Men actually is a good one because what they do is it highlights the Quiet Council, which are like the leaders of the different factions of the X-Men and stuff like that. And what they do, at least what they have been doing, is each issue highlights a different member of the council, and they kind of give you insight on what's been going on with some of the other X-Men characters and stories very, very
Okay.
briefly. Um, Generally speaking, what I say is if there's a detail that you feel like you don't know, that it's probably true you don't know, but I feel like they still do a good enough job to where it doesn't detract from the story necessarily, just
Mhm.
that maybe some of the details you're just like, wait, I want to know like why this is happening necessarily,
Okay.
but you don't need to know why that's happening to understand like what's going on in the story. With that being said, Sins of Sinister Dominion, like the way it ended, I'm still like, I have no idea what's going on. I don't know why this happened, and part of it is because I am very bad at remembering what happened in the previous issue. So I'm sure if I had read the previous issue, I'm like, oh, that's what's going on. That's why. But I can never remember what happened. And so when some of these things are happening in the story in the current issue, I'm like, I feel like I'm lost. I feel like I probably either forgot something or I completely missed something that I didn't notice the first time. So that's more on me than anything else. But I feel like X-Men, there's a lot of stories that happen that you can feel lost easily. But I feel like if you just accept the fact that you're probably not going to know all the details, but just kind of focus on the story that they're telling inside the issue, you're probably going to be fine for the most part. But
Okay. Fair enough.
when you get one, though, you kind of want to get the rest of them. And then it just ends up being a rabbit hole that you just kind of go down this dark, dark hole
Mhm.
of I want to read everything. And then, you're losing money out on it because of that.
It's expensive. You
It
got to
is.
put all these comics somewhere. It creates a storage issue.
Yes. I mean, there's that joke of, there's always these two series have so many titles. It's ridiculous. X-Men and Batman. They always
Yeah.
have so many titles going on simultaneously that it's just hard to keep up with all of it. Just currently, but not even getting into how they started that like in the 80s and 90s and it's still happening today. They just have so many titles that it's just hard to keep up with all of them. So I think if you just accept that fact, you'll probably be okay. Another one that's coming on poll list this week is The Joker, the Man Who Stopped Laughing, number 8, which this is one I absolutely loved. I'm not somebody, again, that loves Joker, but because Comic Watch asked me to do a review of this, I absolutely love the story. It's really fascinating. The art is really good. The storytelling is really good. It's one that I hope people will check out because I feel like it doesn't get enough attention, and it's a really cool story. And it's a really fascinating story. It's a Joker story. It doesn't really involve Batman a whole lot, if at all. But it's just a really cool story that keeps you thinking, what is happening here and what's going to happen next in that series. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, number 5 is coming out this week. I haven't read any of those, not even volume 1 yet, But once this one comes out, that's the last issue of volume 2. And I have all those issues in volume 1. So I'm going to sit down and read those once I have those. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. And then Spider-Man 2099 Dark Genesis comes out this week. And I'll be honest, the only reason why I'm getting this is because they have Daredevil 2099 coming out. And I'm a huge Daredevil fan. So when I heard that Daredevil showing up, I'm like, I'm going to add this on here. So, so that's why
the Daredevil comic is wild right now.
It is so wild. Well, it's another Chip Zdarsky one.
Okay.
And that one and Batman are just, it's like Chips is like, how can I just do the most, craziest thing that people are not expecting and have it, right? Like, for example, Batman, this was issues ago. So spoiler alert, if you haven't read any of the Batman issues yet from Chip Zdarsky, but Batman literally got shot from the moon to Earth and survived like that whole trip, The way he wrote it kind of made sense. Like it's not like a random love. It is. But that's what he does. Like he takes a goofy idea and makes it serious in the sense that he is chuckling at it as well. Like he's a very Chip is a very comical guy. Like if you ever, see his tweets or anything like that, he is just a comedian at heart, I feel like, because he always just makes a lot of jokes and just does funny stuff. But he takes these insane ideas and writes them into stories. And I feel like he always just has a personal laugh about these things. Daredevil is not that level of insanity necessarily, but there's a lot of just, I think there's one, maybe 3 or 4 issues ago, they went into a battle and there was a dragon that showed up, like
perfect.
Which
Makes
is
perfect sense.
Yeah, exactly. Which is not like, there's dragons in the Marvel world and stuff like that, but you don't see that in Daredevil necessarily. But again, the way he wrote it kind of made sense as well too. So, but yeah, I'm a huge Daredevil fan, and I love the Daredevil 2099 that came out from Marvel Knights like years ago. That was written by Robert Kirkman, and I think this has been the first appearance of Daredevil 2099 since then. So that's why I'm getting the series. And then a comic that I'm reading that's not on my pull list, I'm actually going to be going on Short Box Summary podcast, and we're going to be doing a reading of Captain America White series. Ooh. Which there's a whole series of Marvel comics where they did like different colors. So there's like Spider-Man Blue, Daredevil Yellow, which I would have loved to do that, but somebody else actually got asked to do that, which I'm like, oh, that's totally fine. I'll do this one. And Hulk Gray is the other one as well too. So I don't know much about the color series. I haven't read this one before, so I'm really interested to see, what the color series is about, and to read the story and then talk about on their show as well. So those are the comics we're reading, and that is the end of this episode. Ashton, thank you very much for coming on the show. Before I let you go, where can people find you and your work or Free Comic Book Day information online?
Yeah, so I handle all of the Free Comic Book Day social accounts. So if you want to come hang out with me, you can find me online. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Free Comic Book Day. Come talk to me. I love to yell about comics with my friends on the internet. So please join the tribe.
Awesome. Will do. Well, thanks again for joining the show. It's been a blast. I appreciate this very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
And that wraps up another episode of The Captioned Life. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. You can follow us on social media at Captioned Life. For more information about us and all of our previous episodes, visit thecaptionedlife.com.